From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Soini Gray. With just 2 days to go before Brazilians choose their next president, the Workers' Party candidate Fernando Haddad is campaigning in the northeast. Haddad addressed thousands of supporters in the city of João Pessoa. He told them the tide was turning against the far-right frontrunner, and he criticized the recent police repression against university students who were campaigning against Jair Bolsonaro.
He's not equipped to govern Brazil. He doesn't have any proposals. He doesn't know the Northeast. He doesn't speak honestly. He spent 28 years in politics, and he never proposed a single useful measure in all that time in Congress.
Religious groups in Brazil have protested against the far-right candidate Jair Bolsonaro. The demonstration in Sao Paulo was called for on Facebook by a number of different faith groups. Their shared message was love will overcome hate, not him. The latest poll by Datafolio shows Bolsonaro's lead falling by 6 points actually. It gives him 56% compared with 44% for the Workers' Party candidate Fernando Haddad.
In the name of God, who we believe in the name of Christ, who we follow, to ask that love overcome hate, because we believe that this candidate, Jair Bolsonaro, that today, unfortunately, is at the head of the polls, is being moved by hate.
And as his lead slips somewhat in the polls, the far-right frontrunner seems to be toning down some of his more belligerent rhetoric. Jair Bolsonaro has denied he would be at war with Venezuela. He also said Brazil would stay in the Paris Climate Accord if he wins.
Yesterday's accusation in a tweet of the U.S. mission to the United Nations that Cuba organizes and finances the caravan of migrants that is moving through Central America looking for a better future is laughable.
The stakes in Sunday's election reach well beyond Brazil, of course. So joining us now live from Northampton in Massachusetts is the historian and political analyst Vijay Prasad, who has written widely about Brazil. Thank you, Vijay, for joining us. Now, the international media have also often described Jair Bolsonaro as the Brazilian Trump. Do you think that is a fair comparison?
Well, it's nice to be with you. It's not a fair comparison because Bolsonaro, in many ways, is much more closer to being a fascist, for instance, than Trump. He has spoken nostalgically of the years of Brazil's military dictatorship from 1964 to 1985. He's spoken about guns as a better social policy than education or feeding people. This is a man who comes, in a sense, from the sewers of Brazilian politics, and it surprised many people that he became the front runner for the sections of the population, the oligarchy, the middle class, and so on. They would have liked a less belligerent candidate, but this is precisely what they got, somebody who in many ways is to the right of Trump.
So what is at stake internationally, since you think Bolsonaro is more of a fascist than Trump? So what do you think would be the international repercussions of a victory for this candidate?
Well, unfortunately, the repercussions will be minimal. We need to understand that Bolsonaro's double, for instance, Rodrigo Duterte in Philippines, is already in power, and very little has happened to Duterte and his government in the Philippines. Viktor Orban of Hungary is somebody who would fit in as a mirror of Bolsonaro. I mean, very sadly, the world has slipped into a kind of complacency regarding people like Duterte, Bolsonaro, Orban, and in a sense, Trump. These men have been seen as normal when they should really be seen as people of the past and not of the future.
So, Vijay, with that very bleak assessment, what do you think the left around the world can or should do to support their colleagues in Brazil, especially if Bolsonaro wins or indeed What will they do if the Workers' Party candidate, Fernando Haddad, manages to get himself elected?
Keep in mind that Bolsonaro's vice presidential candidate has already said that whether they win or lose, there'll be violence in Brazil. This is a very chilling comment, and one that should not be taken again without some, at least international forces, being very critical of that kind of chilling rhetoric. I think it's important to have solidarity with the people of Brazil. This is going to be a close election on Sunday. But more than anything, I think around the world, the left, ordinary people, sensitive people need to wake up to the very great challenge of the normalizing of men like Bolsonaro, Duterte, and Trump. I think there needs to be much more global action, much more public action to draw people into politics against this kind of toxicity.
Vijay Prasad, thank you so much for chatting with us. Your conversation has been extremely illuminating.
Thank you.
Other news now, it's been a week since the first group of Honduran migrants began walking northwest towards Mexico, and the strain is beginning to show. Our correspondent is with that group.
For 7 days, they have been walking along this Pan-American highway. Exhaustion is setting in. They advance a few kilometers, then wait until a vehicle stops to hitch a ride. Litsi Johanna couldn't keep going. She feels tired, but she still hopes to reach the U.S. to help the family she left in Honduras.
I was able to get in touch with them, but not for several days, since I don't have my phone with me. If my mother can see this, I want to tell her not to worry about me, because I'm okay.
Those who are stronger and more agile quickly jump on the trucks, but families with children cannot do it. They keep going on foot.
We are traveling with a woman and a sick child, and with my daughter. We have to go slowly because if we go too fast, we won't make it. It's better to go slowly.
Local communities prepare to receive the caravan. They gather food, clothing, and medicines.
They need medical attention and food above all. Many have blisters from the walking and sunstroke. We had to send one to a rural hospital.
They have also set up shelters, especially for women, some of them pregnant, and for the children and adolescents.
And there are reports that the United States is considering a travel ban-like executive action that would block certain asylum seekers at the Mexican border. The proposal is said to be in its formative stages and could even be cast aside. But if President Trump approves such a plan, it would represent a dramatic escalation in border enforcement. A provision in the Immigration and Nationality Act allows the president to ban certain classes of immigrants from entering the country if they are deemed detrimental to the interests of the United States. The government of Barbados and the Caribbean Development Bank have entered into a partnership with respect to BIRD, the Barbados Economic Recovery and Transformation Plan.
Assistance strategy that focuses on strengthening fiscal sustainability, enhancing the doing business environment in order to strengthen the country's competitiveness and productivity, building resilience to climate change.
Barbados found itself in a very difficult situation, as you know, and yesterday marked 5 months since I was sworn in as Prime Minister with the Attorney General. And within the first week, we made the clear determination that to turn this country around, we needed an economic recovery and transformation program.
Transparency International is urging the European Union to review some Caribbean countries' visa-free agreements. In a recent report, the anti-corruption organization says the EU should consider following Canada's lead by suspending the visa waiver. It says recent events have raised red flags regarding the due diligence within the process in some of those territories. The report states that Antigua and Barbuda, Dominica, Grenada, St. Kitts and Nevis, and St. Lucia offer a fast-tracked route to citizenship. Now, earlier in October, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development had flagged 21 countries for offering so-called golden passports to wealthy applicants. We're going to take a short break now, but we'll have more news in a minute.
Acompañamos a los pueblos que resisten en cada una de sus luchas.
Somos esa ventana que se abre para visibilizarlos entre fronteras.
Thursdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. The IMF is meeting the Argentine government to discuss a new financial assistance program. President Macri's cabinet is willing to sign the $57 billion financial relief package, which is valid until the start of 2020. The president said the IMF deal is the best way to face the crisis. Argentina's currency depreciated 50% this year, and inflation will reach 40% at the end of 2018. So for 2019, the IMF calculates that the Argentinian economy will shrink by substantially more than forecast in the new budget. Mexico is voting in a referendum on the new airport for the capital. President-elect Andrés Manuel López Obrador has asked citizens to participate in the consultation that will end on Sunday. AMLO, as he's commonly known, has suggested that construction could be cancelled due to the high cost, but he added that the results of the referendum will be respected.
The government will respect whatever citizens decide freely and democratically. The government will also respect all existing contracts related to the project.
The Venezuelan government is condemning remarks made by the head of the European Commission about President Nicolas Maduro. During a news conference in Brussels on Wednesday, Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker said Maduro should be taken before an international court. In a statement, Venezuela's foreign ministry described Juncker's remarks as destabilizing, hostile and nefarious. It adds that any action that seeks to harm the dignity of the Venezuelan people will not be tolerated. And Venezuela has signed a commercial deal with Air Europa to boost tourism. The agreement will be backed by the Petro, Venezuela's cryptocurrency. The alliance will include hotel investments and a commercial alliance with Venezuela's largest airline, Conviasa. It also includes cooperation with global tour operators, mainly European, and an administrative investment in some of Venezuela's international airports. The agreement with the European company is part of the South American country's program of recovery, growth, and economic prosperity. President Evo Morales says that his political party, the Towards Socialism Movement, has registered 1 million voters ahead of Bolivia's first primary election, which takes place next January. Our correspondent Freddy Morales is in Bolivia and he has more.
Morales was flanked by thousands of supporters. The deadline for all political parties to register all party members in the country was Wednesday. It's all part of Bolivia's new law, which also requires the country to hold primary elections. This will take place next January. Social movements appear to have already decided who they're going to vote for.
For us, it is irrevocable. That is decided in Congress at the national level. President Evo Morales, even if he doesn't want to be candidate, he has to listen to people and social movements.
There is no way back. We have already decided in Congress.
Morales says his party has surpassed its goal of registering 1 million members. Morales calls them his militants.
There has been registrations of new and old militants following the Electoral Supreme Court ruling. And I have been informed there are more registration books coming from all over the country.
Meanwhile, the Constitutional Court has given President Morales the green light to present his candidacy for presidential re-election that will take place at the end of 2019.
I am sure, brothers and sisters, that with this massive show of support for registered members, the socialist movement, which is an instrument for sovereignty, is going to keep leading the way. We are sure that we will continue transformation we started, and this will be done in the best interest of the Bolivian people.
So now that Bolivians have registered party membership for the first time, the country readies itself for its first primary polls next January.
Salvadoran President Salvador Sanchez-Cerén has met with his Cuban counterpart Miguel Diaz-Canel in Havana. Sanchez-Cerén is on a 5-day official visit to Cuba. Diplomatic relations between the two Central American nations were restored in 2009 with the arrival of the FMLN, the Farbunto Martí National Liberation Front. Both countries engage in cooperation in areas of health, culture, and the environment. Argentina has organized the first Football World Cup for players with dwarfism. The tournament aims to highlight discrimination against dwarfs and promote their social integration. Teams from Bolivia, Chile, Paraguay, Morocco, the United States and Canada are participating in the event, which will last until October 28th. Now the matches are being played on indoor pitches, which are smaller in size and feature lower goalposts.
Our condition is one of the most discriminated against in the world, and that is what is being changed. That concept they had about us. Now they can see that we play football, and we are also ready to work and study.
Many years ago, I never dreamed that one day I was going to play an official football game, so we are fulfilled in a very big way.
We have more news in a minute. Stay with us.
The Pakistani journalist Tariq Ali examines the mass media influence promoted by imperialism. Get access to the analysis of the socio-economic and political life of the whole South America on our screen and platform in English. A critical place committed to the truth to determine the major events that transform the world today. Mondays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. The police in Florida in the United States have arrested a man in connection with a series of mail bombs just 2 hours after 2 more packages were found addressed to high-profile figures. The suspect has been identified as Cesar Sayok, and he's believed to be in his 50s. The 2 latest packages were sent to Senator Cory Booker and James Clapper, the former director of National Intelligence. In all, 12 pipe bombs have been found since Monday, all addressed to outspoken critics of President Donald Trump.
You know, obviously it's devastating, deeply disturbing to have my name used in that way. As you know, we received one of the packages in our office, and obviously any of the packages that had bounced back would have come to the return address. So it's disturbing, troubling, sinister, and we are going to make sure, and I have been in very close touch with, every level of law enforcement, and they are on top of it, making sure that they throw all the resources of the United States. I've been told by the FBI that this is their highest priority.
Rescue and recovery efforts continue after 19 people were killed in flash floods near the Dead Sea in Jordan. Most of them were students and their teachers who were in a bus that was swept away. The vehicle was carrying 37 middle school pupils and 7 members of staff to Hot Springs. Just over 30 persons were eventually brought to safety during a dramatic rescue operation. Rescuers are hoping that the death toll will not rise. One United Nations expert believes that the Saudi state is responsible for the murder of the journalist Jamal Khashoggi.
It is not quite possible for the state to wash its hands from the behavior of those actors, whether or not somebody even higher up has requested those acts. Where do we stop where do we begin? Where do we stop our construction of the state? They were representing the state when they acted as they acted. The state cannot wash its hands from its responsibilities.
So it doesn't matter whether the Crown Prince or the King say they didn't know?
Of course it matters, but that does not mean that the Saudi state is not responsible.
Meanwhile, people gathered outside the Saudi consulate in Istanbul in a candlelight vigil demanding justice for the murdered journalist. One man, his hands painted red, wore a mask depicting the face of the Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman. Others carried cardboard images of Khashoggi's face and signs reading that they were friends of Khashoggi.
When the news was leaked and we heard that he was killed, I felt very sad for the loss of such a fair journalist. We're all journalists and we are all following the same path, calling for freedom of expression. We're also living abroad, so everyone is afraid that they might face the same fate as Jamal Khashoggi.
My daughter asked me why we were coming here today, so I told her that this is for humanity and that we stand against the incident that happened.
And the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has confirmed that the chief prosecutor of Saudi Arabia will be coming to Turkey to contribute to the investigation of the murder of the journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Erdogan has expressed his frustration over Riyadh's response to the case.
That he was killed is now evident, but where is he? You know to show his body.
Tıpkı Yunus gibi. Bu çocukça açıklamalar.
There have been childish statements, statements far from state seriousness.
Hiçbir manası merak edenlere
Without giving them the originals, we share our information and documents with those who were interested. We share them with Saudi Arabia.
Bunu Suudi Arabistan'a da verdik.
The trial of the son of the former South African president, Jacob Zuma, has been postponed until January. Duduzane Zuma appeared in court with his father on Friday on charges of manslaughter after a fatal car crash in 2014, where he drove his Porsche into a minibus, killing 2 people and injuring another 3. Duduzana will also be on trial for charges related to bribery. 3 Myanmar journalists accused of incitement have been granted bail by a judge in Yangon. They were arrested earlier this month for criticizing the financial management of one of the ministers and a close ally of the state councillor, Aung San Suu Kyi. The journalists work with the country's largest private newspaper, 11 Media. The international community has condemned the arrest of the journalists in Myanmar. In September, 2 Reuters journalists were sentenced to 7 years in prison. And now let's take a look at what other stories are making headlines around the world.
The White House has invited Russian President Vladimir Putin to Washington for a full day of consultation, according to the U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton. The meeting is expected to take place early next year. The U.S. and Russian presidents also plan to hold bilateral talks in Paris on November 11th, alongside the commemorations for the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I. Public transport workers in Rome have staged a 24-hour national strike to demand better working conditions. Organized by transport unions, the strike stopped bus, tram, metro and rail services across the Italian capital and its suburbs. The protest comes 2 weeks ahead of a referendum where Rome citizens will vote on the privatization of the city's public transport company.
I think the strike is a fundamental right in today's civilization. It is fundamental, of course, if the workers' protest is not heard. Problems will remain. Obviously, strikes bring disruption, but on the other hand, it cannot be done otherwise. Without disruption, people will not even notice it. Even today, some people do not know that there is a strike.
Ireland has gone to the polls to vote both in the presidential election and a referendum to repeal its constitutional law forbidding blasphemy. The votes are being held on the same day to reduce costs. After recent referendums on legalizing abortion and same-sex marriage, this is the country's latest step of gradual detachment from the Catholic Church.
If you have nightmares about the earth opening up and swallowing you, you might want to look away for a few moments. 2 Turkish women were swallowed by a collapsing pavement. CCTV footage showed the women, one a doctor and the other nurse, disappearing in a cloud of dust. Bystanders did rush to their assistance and pulled them out of the hole. Fortunately, they only sustained minor injuries. We've come to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at talisyoutv.net/English. For views in Africa, we are on StarStat 461 in South Africa and 539 in Nigeria. But everyone can follow us on social media because we are on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. For Talis English, I'm Sunny Gray. Thank you for watching.